Welcome to the Circle Sessions featuring the Circle of Experts. The Circle of Experts are Yasmine Robles from Robles Designs, Tanisha English Amamu of TJE Communications, and Don the Idea Guy. I'm Brett Johnson from Circle 270 Media Podcast Consultants. Each week, one of the Circle of Experts joins me to talk about some critical aspects of growing your podcast. We focus on marketing, social media, monetization, and website design to help you implement all of these together. And this episode, we have Yasmine Robles again from Robles Designs. Thanks for joining me again.
Yeah, thanks you keep inviting me. I keep coming back.
Well, for every episode, I'm learning something. So and that's not, the bar's not that high for this, but at the same time, it's like I walk away going, ooh, I love that. That's so cool. But today too, mastering domain selection, tips on and tricks of choosing that perfect domain name. And that's becoming more and more difficult because some domain names are not available anymore. So, let's talk about why domain names are so important for businesses.
Yeah. And so I completely agree. It's starting to get harder and harder. And clients, you might have a business name, but you can't get that domain name, or it's taken and not even being used, right? It could be for sale for $10,000. And I don't know about you, but I don't plan on, $10,000 is not something I plan on spending for a domain name.
Right.
But they are important for a business, and it is something that we almost like the name of the business. It's something that we get to think about because it's something that will be promoted for a long time, and it's hard to change. So hard to change in terms of branding it and people recognizing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So your domain name is really your online identity. I would say although you have a business name, your domain name is almost like the nickname of your business. It's the first thing that people will see when they go to your website, right up at the top at the address bar. And it really plays a significant role in shaping the perception of your brand. You want it to be memorable, to be relevant, and that's going to help establish trust and credibility with your audience while really making it easier for them to find you and remember your website.
Right. So let's think about some key considerations that businesses should keep in mind when choosing that domain name.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different factors to consider. First and foremost, relevance is key. Your domain name should really reflect your brand and the products and services that you offer. It should also be memorable and easy to spell. I suggest avoiding hyphens or numbers. They can make it a little difficult to remember. And of course, it's important to choose one or a domain extension that really aligns with your business goals and the target audience. So for example, you don't want, if my domain name was, let's say, Yasmine Robles Design Studio USA.co, you would not be able to remember that versus roblesdesigns.com. And even then, I have to spell out my last name because when I created it, when I found that domain name, I thought it was going to be a solopreneur and that was it. If I would have known where I am today, I probably would have tried to pick a cool, spunky domain name. But now everybody remembers it. So I've kept it. I don't feel like rebranding. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing one.
Well, you make a good point. So rather than changing things, you can also change the branding of maybe just a very cool look of like you've done in regards to just, let's say in the video we're doing right now, the background you've got, you have that feel around what you've done. So you're making yourself unique outside of the .com. May not be where you want it to be, but you're doing the branding of the visual behind it, which is eye-catching and memorable as well too. So there may be some ways to dance around it as well too. So yeah. So what are some practical tips for that domain name selection? I mean, how can businesses go about brainstorming? That may be the biggest thing, and then generating domain name ideas. I mean, you could have a whiteboard completely empty and you don't even know where to start, but it's like, how can we get through this process?
Yeah. So one approach that we take is to really start brainstorming keywords and phrases that are relevant to your business. If you're a law firm, let's say personal injury lawyer, we start kind of brainstorming around that. And then we can use the domain name generators or keyword research tools to really generate even more ideas based on those keywords. So it's also a good idea to check the availability of the domain name, because you could fall in love with one and then find out that there's either a trademark conflict, it's been taken already, and you want to make sure you know all of that before you make your final decision and fall in love with one. Now, I will explain that the reason that I say keywords first and not what sounds cool is because it's not a big role, but I would say it does play a role in being found in just SEO. Um, and website design. So for example, if I have in my name roblesdesigns.com, the designs is in there. If I would have been a little thought about it a little bit more, it probably would be just also some kind of cool design agency name. I don't know what that would be, some like hip and cool thing. But I would also possibly add marketing to the domain name. And again, trying to make sure that it's somewhat shortened, maybe like yourmarketingdepartment.com or whatever it might be, right? So that way it has some kind of keyword in there. Now, if you're a local business, it doesn't hurt to, again, it depends on the length. It doesn't hurt to have Columbus in there. Just kind of think about those keywords that belong to your business. And then you could also use AI to generate a few ideas. It won't know whether it's taken or not. So again, don't fall in love with one just yet. You're just generating ideas, and then check those trademarks to make sure nothing scary would come up.
Yeah, well, I've gone through that with some podcasters that they're quote unquote stuck with the podcast name, and the podcast name is actually a .com. So that they can't use that .com, but adding show to the end, or podcast show or something like that. I mean, the variables there. Yeah. You're not quite in love with it, but it gets the job done. But yeah, it's one of those, you fall in love with it. You fell in love with the podcast name. It's like, oh, didn't realize it was a .com, a long time ago. So maybe there's some variable from it, that sort of thing. Can you share some examples of businesses that have mastered domain name selection and how it benefited them?
Yeah, I have a couple. So if you take, for example, the company FreshBooks, they're a competitor to QuickBooks, but both of them have their domain name. For example, FreshBooks is freshbooks.com, QuickBooks is the same. It's really simple. It's memorable. It really reflects what services they offer, such as online invoicing, accounting, all that stuff. Yeah. This straightforward approach has helped them really establish a stronger presence online. Obviously, they do marketing and things like that, but it can help make it a little bit easier for people to choose them. Again, FreshBooks and QuickBooks, they're obviously competitors, but then there's also things like ClickUp, right? So that sounds like you're ClickUp, you're clicking. It's basically task management, right? I would say that one is a little better than Asana. If I have no idea what Asana means. I actually I pay for Asana, and I know it's asana.com and all that stuff, but I still think ClickUp sounds more like a task management tool than Asana. And then if you take the example of Canva, everybody uses Canva now. Their domain name is canva.com, which basically kind of like Canvas, right? They started off as this graphic design platform that really empowered their users to create cool graphics without having the need to purchase expensive Photoshop programs. Again, canva.com, it's simple, memorable. It's a domain name that really plays a significant role in establishing their business as a household name. So those are just a few of the examples.
Yeah, if you've caught any shows on Hulu, you've seen the Canva commercial. And they've done a great job with it. It actually works perfectly. And I don't think they're necessarily rebranding themselves, but they're certainly tweaking it for the business world. That it's not just a playground. It's that you can actually use Canva to make some money. And I think it's great. No, it's a well done commercial. Now, before we wrap up, are there any common mistakes that businesses should avoid when choosing a domain name? One comes to mind, but I don't think you can avoid it, is like dropping vowels. But sometimes you can't. You know what I mean? I just say it's so weird to see things spelled weird, but maybe you have to.
Yeah. And the vowels thing is hard. I would say for vowels, if it's so for example, if you're going to spell marketing department, but you're going to make it shorter. So is it going to be, and it depends, is it going to be MKG, MKTG? You got to make that decision, but know that when you when it's something like marketing and depending on who's abbreviating it, you'll need to probably spell it out versus department. You can say, oh, it's department abbreviated. Usually it's DEPT, but again, who knows? So if you're abbreviating something or getting rid of letters, just know that you might have to end up spelling it out. Another common mistake is choosing a domain name way too long. So if you're trying to shorten it and you take out letters, you might have to spell it. Or it might end up being way, way too long. When I first started out, Robles Designs wasn't available. And so I ended up with YasmineRoblesDesigns.com. And my email was literally, and you should think about this as well when it comes to getting email. My email was Yasmine@YasmineRoblesDesigns.com. And that was very, very confusing. So then once I set up an alert and once RoblesDesigns.com became available, then that is when I was able to purchase it. And now it's just Robles Designs. So if you want to, you basically want to make it as easier as possible for people to type it and to remember the domain name. It's also important to steer clear of any trademark things. Like if you find out that Walmart.co is available, I'm not sure that your e-commerce site should be using that, to just avoid any legal issues. And just do your research when it comes to that, and check the availability of the domain name. And just if the domain name that you love isn't available, keep checking it every so often. Like RoblesDesigns.com, they eventually lapsed in their payment, and I was able to snag that before they circled back to it.
Yeah, maybe we could do a future episode. What popped to mind was maybe like a redirect. Of, if you find something you really do like, but you don't want to, we could go the pros and cons of that. I'm sure there are pros and cons, but that might be a topic for a future episode. We probably spend another 10 minutes on that, but but it is an option too, of if you find something you really do love, but I just want to own it. I don't need to really build on it because I've got this other .com. It can go to it too. So we'll save it for a future. We'll tease it out, but it's one of those that I'm sure it could come out to a full blown with some other intricacies with that, how to do it well and such too.
Yeah. So, I would say one more bonus before I forget. It would be the .com. So people, you can do a .design now, .com, all of those. Think about your target audience. So if you are, for example, if you are a SaaS company, so you're selling some kind of software, I can see that you would be .io, maybe. If you are a design agency, maybe, or some kind of tech, you could do .design. But if your target audience, let's say you're a senior living home, and your target market is probably the kids of the folks who might be going into senior living, you probably want to go with .com, that age group. You just, again, research your age group. If they are, depending on their age, they might be more prone to .com. That's what they were, just what they grew up with maybe, or what they are just used to. They might not be used to .us or .net or .design. So really think about your business, what you're offering, and then your target market in order to ensure that that there isn't anything too weird. And if you are stuck, you say, you know what, RoblesDesigns.com isn't available. I want to shorten it, but only the .us is available. I might purchase the .us, but I would also look at other variations that end in .com, just because I want to avoid any issues with, for example, if you're talking to someone and you have to keep saying, it's not .com, it's .us, it's just going to get confusing.
Yes, it will. It's a little inside baseball information here, but when they released the .fm, was it called vanity.coms, whatever? I forget what span of time that the businesses, entertainment was jumping on .fms. At one time, there were more podcasters jumping up. Something in the podcast need is jumping on .fms than radio stations. Unbelievable. Wow. Yeah. It's so odd. But again, .pod was not really, hot, but .fm podcasters are jumping on and radio stations just didn't. And it's like,
now I wonder if the kids these days even know what FM is.
I know, that's the thing. It's just the coolness of it. It's just odd that happened in that short when it first released. And the percentages may have changed by now, but I saw that a while back going, really? You would think the FMs would at least buy it for the redirect of it, if you've got the FM listeners. But anyway, it's neither here nor there, but just a little bit of trivia for what it's worth. So if a listener is interested in this domain topic, it's like they've been racking their brain, some new product, new business they're doing, or something that's tangential to what they're doing. How can they get a hold of you to kind of do some brainstorming, kind of figure this out?
Yeah, feel free to. I'm mostly on LinkedIn, so feel free to find me there. You can send me a message and we can chat about any questions that you might have. You can also find us at roblesdesigns.com, Designs.com. You can download a free checklist if you'd like. It is roblesdesigns.com/checklist. And yeah, just message me. We can get together and I can answer a lot of your questions.
Super. And if it has anything to do with podcasting, you get a hold of me, get to my calendar website, mypodcastguy.com. And let's set up a time. And if it has something to do with some domain search, that sort of thing, we'll bring Yasmine in. Yeah, that's for sure. So that's why we have the circle sessions with all the circle of experts here to touch upon what is needed. And if it has anything to do with the website that you have or going to have for your podcast, we'll bring Yasmine in as well, too. But go to mypodcastguy.com and set up a time. Thanks for joining me, Yasmine.
Thank you so much.